something completely different. Hello everybody, I've been spending today as the guest of the lovely people at Gardner Douglas Sports Cars, purveyors of fine 1960s inspired machinery. They are perhaps best known for their GD T70, what you and I would call a Cobra replica. However, they are keen to point out is not actually a replica at all. It looks a lot like a Cobra, but underneath is entirely different. I had a go in that this morning when conditions were not in my favour, and I must say, despite that, I really enjoyed it. But now I'm in something a little bit spicier. This is their T70, inspired by Eric Broadley's Lolas of the 1960s. Some may already know the name, and if the shape is vaguely familiar to you, that is because it's a Lola that formed the basis of the Ford GT40. And if this car is even half as good as they say, it should be something pretty special. So, is it? Well, stick around to find out. Just in case you've not heard of them, Gardner Douglas have now been in business for 33 years, with their founder Andy Burrows having started by first building other kits and then building cars for himself back in the 1980s. He comes from an engineering background and so is very proud of what lies underneath these cars. In the case of the 427, it is a triangulated steel chassis onto which they have placed a fiberglass body, which actually forms part of the structure. This is a very different animal. The chassis itself is twice as wide and what you would truly call a space frame. Unlike the 427, the bodywork here is not mechanically structural. Instead, it provides both looks and aerodynamics. I must say, I'm not actually a huge fan of the way that the car looks. It has some very awkward angles, and though it does have the overall impression of being a 1960s prototype racer, because that's really what it is, I don't think it's anywhere near as shapely as the GT40. It's certainly got shades of many a Lotus, to some the Elise, but to me more the likes of the 3040, and I suppose in a lot of ways you could call this the Elise's mad, bad and slightly deranged uncle. Behind me is a 6.2 litre naturally aspirated Chevrolet small block known as the LS3, which has had a Lingenfelter cam upgrade and now makes around 500 horsepower. And they're all there. I've counted them. Andy tells me that he was a little bit disappointed with the car because, on account of the fact that he wanted it to be structurally sound, it was a little bit heavier than it strictly could have been. So when I said, "What do you mean?" he said, "Well, it's about 950 kilos. Crumbs. Were this a real prototype racer of the 60s or 70s, it may have weighed quite a bit less, but it would have also suffered in many different ways." Perhaps even more incredibly, they're currently working on a version of this car which has a carbon fibre chassis. That is considerably stiffer than this, by a factor I think of about 4, yet weighs 50 kilograms less. Though you might reasonably think that because this and the 427 share many key ingredients, the way they're constructed, their power plants, that they feel the same, you'd be very much mistaken. They are about as different as it gets. First off, the driving position. That is classic old school muscle car. This full-blooded racer. You don't actually have to have these with a screen at all, but they can do it either with, without, or if you want, with a roof, in a model they call the Moda, of which we have an example currently following us. The Mark IV is very spacious, quite luxurious, plenty of leather throughout, there's room in the cabin, lots of adjustment. This, not much of the sort. It does feel very much Lotus Elise GT40. You're really crammed in here, and though it is technically a two-seater, you'd have to be very, very friendly with whoever you shared this cabin with. In order to accommodate the mid-engine layout, the gearbox here is also different. In that, it is a Tremec 6-speed. Here, it is a Porsche transaxle. In keeping with that sports racer vibe are the fact you've got the gear lever over here on the right, and this car's owner, Pete, who also built it, topped it with a 917-inspired gear knob. Oddly, despite the fact that the car actually has more weight over the rear, it does actually feel a little heavier in the steering than the Mark IV. That may be due to the fact that the wheel here is absolutely microscopic. That had a big classic wooden item, this does not. The whole interior also does feel a lot more stripped out. I've also just noticed that there's a camera over there showing me one of the belts on the engine. That's interesting. I must ask why that is.
Apparently, a belt had snapped in the past, and so the camera was the owner's way of keeping an eye on it in the future.
Performance is absolutely biblical. From no RPM, the car has oodles of go. It's also really easy to place because it's actually quite small. Oh, yes, please. I tell you what, this is one of those cars where no matter what you've been in, no matter how fast it was, if you've experienced a McLaren 720S, you'd still get in this and go, yeah, it's quick. This is fantastic. Turning circle, not great. At low speeds, I have had issues with it. Stalled it once already, and then the immobilizer kicked in. The indicators also don't appear to self-cancel. Yep, bit of wheel spin there. Ah, this is great. You know what? That Mark IV really felt like a very relaxed cruiser. I was driving it in the pouring rain and it wasn't terrifying. This is like a sort of mixture of, I don't know, cocaine and gunpowder. Oh my life! Brakes are mighty, obviously. No traction control, no stability control, no ABS, no driver assistance whatsoever. Perhaps unsurprisingly, the Mark IV, the Cobra wrap, and I'm going to apologise to the guys there, I'm just going to keep calling it the Cobra because that's what you're going to call it. The Cobra outsell these by something like 20 to 1. But I happen to think if they got a few more people in one of these, they'd probably sell quite a few more. But I got to give it some credit. It is a lot more than just a straight line thunder machine. The car has that impressive steel chassis with a quality of welds that are far, far better than I've seen on anything Italian. It's also got double wishbone suspension all round. They now have machined uprights, which are an absolute work of art. The latest cars have also replaced the Porsche-derived transaxle with the same unit as found in a Lamborghini Gallardo or an Audi R8. The dampers at the front are even mounted really nicely and neatly, cleverly packaged away, and I think if I brought this to a track day, I'd be just as happy pulling all the panels off and looking at it as I would be taking it out. At some point I'm going to try and turn around here. Right, let's see if I can do a 3-point turn, shall we? Easier said than done, I'm sure. Reverse is just all the way over and click, as it would be in a Porsche. You do have mirrors. Oh, yep, quite close to the curb there. And no power steering. Woo. And here we go again. I think if you had a Lotus Exige Cut 430 and you really liked that, but you felt it was a little soft, you wanted something even more visceral, this is the car for you. For big, long trips, no, I think I get very tired with it very, very quickly. And that, of course, is where the Cobra really comes into its own. Grip, I must say, is sensational. The tyres have clearly got a bit of warmth in them, though at the back, they're not exactly lacking for width. Very Countach-esque Pirellis at the back. 335 wide with that sort of iconic twin pattern for the treads. Now, unfortunately, there are a couple of issues. First off, if you buy one like this, you've got no roof. You can't have one fitted, that's the motor. But perhaps the biggest issue is going to be the price. They're not cheap at all. To build a car like this, well, it's about £100,000. If you'd like to buy this exact car, it's currently up for sale, but just under 80, and it's with Gardner Douglas themselves, so it will be fully checked over and everything else, so you know you're buying a good one. Actually, the brake pedal is also going in my list of things I don't love. It is just a touch wooden. The Cobra was the same. I think it's the pads that they're using. The calipers are absolutely fine. And look, I get it. I absolutely get it. £100,000 gets you into an awful lot of stuff. 911, Ferrari F430, McLaren 570S, 650S, Gallardos, all sorts. But there is very, very little out there that for that money is going to go as quick as this. I'm told 0 to 60 in this can be done in 2.4 seconds. It is also, I will give it credit, far more protected from the elements than the likes of, say, an Ariel. It's also a lot more interesting than a Caterham, and if you want to build it at home, you can. Or if you want Gardner Douglas to build it, they'll do that too. You can, of course, have it in, well, basically whatever colour you like. This is actually one of the standard gel coat options. I think I myself would probably wind up going for a GT40 replica if I'm in the market for this kind of thing, but that's a decision I make based on looks alone. In terms of the drive, this is far and away better than any of those that I've experienced. And I'm not just talking about the speed, it's the interactivity, the feel, the excitement. It's got all of those in spades. You want an automotive adrenaline shot? This'll do. So, there we go. That's a little look at a car that you don't see on YouTube every day. And I'm very grateful to this car's owner, Pete, and the people at Gardner Douglas for letting me have a go. Don't forget to hit the like button, comment down below, and if you want to know more about their products, make sure to check out their website. I'll put a link for that in the description down below. But for now, all that remains to be said is a big thank you to you for watching, and don't forget to hit the like button, comment down below, and subscribe if you haven't already. I'll see you for the next one. Bye-bye.